Welcome back to the 2218 Attitude for Gratitude Weekly Live Podcast. All right, sound effects are in effect, and I'm also here with my new buddy here who's going to be sitting in for some co-hosting shows. We'll see how that works out. Our guest tonight, Terry W., who I've been advertising for quite some time, ended up having some things pop up where he wasn't able to make it, but he will be returning. I just don't have a date for that yet.
What he's trying to say is that I am your consolation prize.
Tony is not the consolation prize. As I introduced you, you are basically one of the new co-hosts. So we're testing the waters here and checking things out, and I'm blessed to have you in the house tonight, Tone.
Appreciate that.
You know how I feel and what I think. Well, no one knows what I think, but so 2218. Hey, everybody, listen, if you're struggling tonight, if you're hurting, if you're feeling down in the crapper, if things just are not looking so hot right now, give it some time. You're worth the fight. Reach out. We do commenting on here. Utilize that platform. I'm going to talk about some meetings that are going on at 2218, and there's, what we share about tons of stuff. We'll work for recovery, New Hope Alleno, Fridley, Blaine Alleno. We talk about Serenity Village. We talk about all the time, 2218. There's tons of meetings. There's tons of different opportunities to get involved with different avenues of service work out here in the Twin Cities. What I'm getting at is if you're struggling, just try to find one of these different things to get out and get yourself involved in. It makes things a little easier in getting out of your head. It's worked for me. And I know that we have tons and tons of people that check in every week. So just utilize this platform. As always, this is an interactive show. So that means interact. I'll throw my phone number up here. You can utilize that number if you don't want to leave any messages on here. It's quite all right. I get tons of messages every week as well. And if there's something you want me to ask Tony, if there's a topic you guys want us to talk about, if there's something that you want the show to start doing or a different path of the show, or you have questions about what's going on at 2218 or in the recovery community, or you have events that you want to share about, get after it. This show is your show. This podcast is the Recovery Community's podcast. This doesn't belong to any one entity. It belongs to the recovery world. So with that said, utilize it. Own it. Make it yours. If you want to be on the show, reach out to me. If there's someone you want to hear on the show, reach out to me. Let me know. There's no, like my teachers used to say, there's no bad question. Well, I learned really quickly that I tested that theory, and I tested that theory. So here at 2218, we've got a lot of things going on here with this board, this new board, and the new members on the board, and things that are happening here. We've got tons and tons of new events, tons and tons of new meetings came to the club. They're starting new meetings weekly. Like I said, we have Al-Anon back in the house. CMA is back in the house. We got tons of different NA meetings, tons and tons of AA meetings. We've got... The matter of fact, I'll get into it. I just was handed a new flyer for the Dorothy, let me just say this right. This is Friends of Dorothy meeting that is Saturday night, starts at 8 p.m. And this is an LGBTQ plus and sensory friendly meeting. I'm not sure what all that means, but we are going to have like 4 of their members on the show here coming up. I don't know. I invited the whole meeting to come on the show. The more they can share about what it is, the less ignorant I sound when I talk about it. So just know it's an alternative to some other meetings. It's another thing going on. And with that said, there's a sober, here, I'm just going to read this whole flyer. Sober Pride, Minnesota, Friends of Dorothy, Saturday, June 24th at 9 p.m. Friends of Dorothy, Sober Pride, maybe they just kept repeating it. Yes, it is. I would have been reading it 9 times over. Sorry about that. We do have a bunch of events coming on up here at 2218. Looking forward. We have a dance coming up Saturday, June 18th. We have, oh, wow, am I a little behind on this? May, June. Oh boy. You guys got to stay on top of me about this stuff. Um, let's see here. I was handing something for way out in June. The week of June, June 18th through the 25th, we have a whole week. It's called Dale S. Week at 2218. It's a lot of stuff going on here. The club's got tons of stuff always going on. So come check it out. Get on down to the club. 2218 Alano Society Bike Night, first Wednesday of every month. It's the first Wednesday of every month from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Stop on in, stretch your legs, free fellowship, $5 burgers, chips, soda, and coffee. This is going to be awesome. Always weather pending, but we all have gear. So come on down. You don't even have to have a bike to come on down and enjoy this. You come fellowship with a bunch of knuckleheads on bikes, or not everyone's knuckleheads on bikes. I am, though. So come check it out. Again, we have Al-Anon in the house. Now, this is huge. After COVID, a lot of things happened. A lot of meetings weren't able to keep taking place here, but that's changed. A lot of meetings are coming back. There's been some pricing adjustment in the rooms for rent for holding a meeting here, and you should come on down and check it out. If you have an idea for a meeting that you want to start, come on down. There's so many different rooms. This is a huge old mansion with tons of rooms and tons of options for holding a meeting. So this new Al-Anon meeting is at 7 o'clock in room 23 every Thursday night. Come check it out. And we have tons of events like Gopher State's coming up, Ride for Recovery. All these type of things are coming up, and the closer we get, the more I'll start advertising about it. If there's things that you want to be part of, reach out to me directly, and I will get you in touch with the proper parties, or come on down and talk to Scott or whoever's working the front desk to fill out to be part of. Saturday nights we have we have a speaker meeting every day at noon. We have a high noon meeting. It's an AA meeting. So come to the club, check it out. Again, I just want to really, really stress that if you are struggling tonight, please reach out. I'm going to put my number on here. You can reach out to me directly. I can get you in touch with whatever avenues of help we need. I can just share from you know what? You guys don't want to look at my face. Jeez Louise. Tone, you're supposed to tell me that my ugly mug is back on here.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention.
I know. And you know what? I got multiple people listed. Maybe they're on YouTube and they couldn't. So when my face is on here, we lose viewership like up the wazoo. No one wants to take a look at this mug. There we go. Beautiful building is back. Background. Come on. It's not letting us do that, and I do not think that's a good thing. So, Tony.
Ready.
How are you? When I give you a call, you always say, what do you say? Go ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller. Is that a radio thing?
It's what it sounds like. That's kind of what I want it to sound like.
It does. I love it. I call, he's like, go ahead, caller. So we had Tony on the show a couple weeks back, and I had really great response to you being on the show, and some people came to me and said, like, hey, why doesn't he try out the co-hosting deal or whatever the case is? And I brought it to you and said, would you be willing to come on every now and again or set something up, maybe permanently or bi-weekly or whatever? And you sounded, well, you're here.
Right, yeah, I'm okay with it. I don't know that I can come every week, but I certainly don't mind doing my part.
And
once again, happy listeners, remember, everything that's written in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is conference-approved material. Everything that comes out of my mouth is not.
I thought you were going down a different avenue with that. I love it. Here we go. 612-791-9942. Utilize that phone number if you're ever struggling. Reach out to that number if you just need some information about different meetings or whatever, and I'll do my best to help you out there. So, Tony, there's a few things that we didn't have time to get to, and I'm going to kind of pick up on some of that stuff and just start picking your brain on some of that again.
Okay.
And because our conversation went the way it went, we didn't have time to really go over some of my little standard basic questions, and I'd like to touch on those.
Ready.
So here's what I need us to revisit, and it's because I had people really comment or came to me and talked to me about the way you viewed it and the way you were talked about it, and I want to bring it up again. And I talked to Paul about it today. Is he said something? Let me just explain a story. I was with the boss man today. We were in the car, stuck on a ride, and we were talking. And it came up about how some people say, "Oh, it's all about the newcomer or the newcomer." I was like, "Oh, Tony says that too." And he corrected me. He said, "Tony doesn't say that. Tony says, explain what you were talking about, why it's so important for you to come to meetings and why you feel you need to be at meetings." Something
Well,
on those. Yeah.
I don't know that I've gone to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for myself in 20 years. I think, now, first of all, I have benefited from them. I go to AA. I try to go to AA every single day. I don't make it every day, but I try. And but I go to Alcoholics Anonymous 5 or 6 or 7 times a week because I cannot bear the thought of a new person walking in the front door of Alcoholics Anonymous for the very first time and no one is there to talk to him. I cannot bear that thought. And I hope anybody out there is similar. I hope you cannot bear that thought either. Because, I mean, I'm like most alcoholics. When I got to the front door of this place, I was a train wreck.
Oh, yeah.
And in the, about as bad as you can get, pretty significantly. I mean, I was drinking myself to death, plain and simple. No end in sight, no hope, no way to go anywhere, couldn't do anything. And I was in desperate need of a solution. And had I walked into the front door of Alcoholics Anonymous and there was no one there to offer a solution, I'd been dead 20 years ago. And I cannot bear that thought.
And that's a powerful thing. I think Paul said it too. When I tried to reiterate word for word what you just said, he's like, "Ooh, goosebumps," because it's not just a blanket statement. I also I'm just regurgitating some private conversations, but I brought up a guy named John B. and you to him. I said, when these two men, that's what I said. I said, "Have you ever heard Tony share in a meeting?" And I don't, maybe this is what all alcoholics do or not. This is what I do. I talk, this is my life. Mm-hmm. So when I have things to talk about, it's usually revolved around recovery. And I said, have you ever heard either of them share? And he said, "Yeah, I have." He goes, "I didn't know you went to the meeting after that on Thursday nights, you attend that other meeting."
Sometimes,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's in a meeting, this is a question I have for you is, when you share at a meeting, what is it that prompts you to share? Let's just use a big book study. We kind of explain what a big book study meeting is, and why do you ever speak up when you're there?
I think that using a big book study as an example, I think by default, things come to mind that had happened to me that were relevant at the time. I'll use this as an example. On the bottom of page 42 is a paragraph and a half about, and it is exactly what happened to me. Having said that, I remember it vividly. I remember experiencing it. I remember reading it in the book. I remember the guy that helped me with the steps and I talking about it. And it's relevant to me. And so I bring that up in the meeting because it is, it's just personal experience. And if I want to use a catch-all, I look at the big book in various places, if not most or all places, and I think about it, whatever's being talked about, and I just look at the book, read what it says, and then just say, "This is what happened to me," and I start talking.
So with that, I have a couple guests that come on. They're my only reoccurring guests. Rick B and Jesse E. They do the 4-step workshop. They're very involved with recovery, and they're here quite a bit. And we go through steps. Each month we tackle a step, however that looks. They run a 4-step workshop, so we just went through 4, and it wasn't so in-depth that I thought because of them running the show. But The way we do it is usually Rick or Jesse will start reading where they think it applies to these steps, and then Rick will kind of pop in and share some about it. So what I want to do is I'm going to read a little bit from this book, and if you're okay with that,
Yes.
and then share a little bit on whatever I just read, what that if you have experience with it or whatever the case is, then bear with my reading. So this is from page 42, and we're going to kind of start in the middle of a paragraph. And this is a chapter that is called More About Alcoholism.
Correct.
So, and this is a story that they're telling. I'm not going to read the whole story, but a lot of this stuff in this book, when they do tell stories, and at the back of a book, at the back of this particular Alcoholics Anonymous book, there's tons of personal stories in there. And same with like the Bill's story, I believe, for me, it helped me to identify or relate to finding myself in a lot of these words. And I think you kind of shared in another form or another way, you just shared that same sentiment by saying, you know, it triggers a memory of how this applies in your life. Or am I kind of going down the right path with saying that?
Yeah, and oddly, I highly approve of Bill's story. I like every single bit of it. But the truth is, I didn't identify with Bill's story near as much as I did with those subsequent chapters. More about alcoholism. There is a solution, into action. These things of this nature, I identified with those much more than I did in Bill's story.
So, 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I did not like so much. And then they asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic, and if I were really licked this time, if I was really beat, if this was the last time. I thought I had to concede both positions. I had to concede propositions. Yeah, you know this word for word. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect of the alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozens. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I had that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow, but the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. That was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind...
This is it right here.
The moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be.
Okay, when he says that, you know what's the most amazing thing to me? As soon as he made up his mind...
And you shared this.
As soon as he made up his mind, he had the feeling, he had the feeling that his alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. To me, the amazing part of that is he had done nothing more than make a decision. He hadn't done any steps yet. He hadn't been to a single meeting yet. He hadn't spent any time in recovery. He hadn't done anything but make a decision. And that's what happened to me. Sparing you all the details, and I was laying in the bed in the detox unit again. And I finally realized that I had 2 alternatives. I will drink myself to death, or I will go to Alcoholics Anonymous and I will do anything they ask me to do. And I'm laying in the bed in this detox, and I made up my mind. I made a decision. And it's like, I'm going to AA because I don't want to drink myself to death, and I will do absolutely anything that they ask me to do.
Now, I guess this is more than even a 2-part question, because it kind of goes in depth, and I'm jumping way far ahead here.
That's all right.
Alcoholism, the drinking. All right, drink is a problem. Making the decision to stop drinking. Did you know at that time that this was going to change more than just stopping the alcohol?
I had an idea, and that's because I'd been a constant relapser for 10 years. I'd been in and out of AA and never really given it any effort or thought, whatever. I just wanted to get the cops off my ass or the family or the boss or whomever.
Right.
But sooner or later, I was drinking again. At no time during that 10 years did I have any real serious intention of getting sober and staying that way.
So where I'm going also with this is because you've changed. I didn't know you before, but I can usually say this and say it with some success to my, not accusation, but to what I think is you've changed as a person. When you decided to stop drinking, then you learned how to put the bottle down. But now, I don't know you're for a fact, but there's that horse thief still. You know, they talk about a drunk real quick.
Right.
Drunken horse thief. You get rid of the drunken part, you still have a horse thief.
Correct.
So was there a Tony problem still to deal with?
Absolutely.
Okay. No.
You know,
Yeah.
I absolutely knew that I had had enough. Let me say it, like this. I had had enough exposure to Alcoholics Anonymous that I kind of got the gist of what was going on. To be fair, I looked at the lion's share of the steps in the big book as total bullshit and voodoo, and I just didn't believe it. Because I had no intentions of adhering to it or trying to do anything. But at the moment, see, there's one more part of this, and before I get carried away on something else, I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
When I made a decision to go to Alcoholics Anonymous and do anything they asked me to do, that's when I had the curious feeling that that my alcoholic condition was relieved. Now, having said that, I had to follow through with my decision. Had I not done that, I would just been on sober, you know, sorta pretending
drunk
to be
type deal?
No, I think I would have stayed around for a little while until I got sick of it, and then I just would have gone out and I'd have been drinking again.
Okay.
But I think that one of the biggest components outside of the decision is to, I mean, it's a commitment. You know, in a doctor's opinion, it says that there's a psychopath and he makes many resolutions but never a decision.
Yeah.
Well, that was me. I was a psychopath and made a lot of resolutions, but I never made a decision
I think a lot of us can relate to that. Though.
and never stuck to it. You know, and I stuck to my decision. But you know what? I hadn't done any steps yet. I hadn't seriously been to AA. I had never had anybody help me with the steps. I'd never spent any time in the book. And these are all things that are, you know, quite frankly, without those things, I don't see how anybody can stay sober. Anybody that's a real alcoholic, I think you absolutely have to do those things. And I followed through with the commitment, and I haven't had a drink since.
So, and I think you answered it well enough there when I was asking that. And it's a goofy question. Is when you decided to stop drinking, were you looking for more than just not picking up a drink, like changing your whole outlook on things, or changing how you are to other people, or
You know what? Not so much at that moment. At that moment, I just didn't want to drink myself to death.
okay, yeah,
And you know what? Thankfully enough, that was good enough.
yeah,
You know, and you hear all kinds of things. They call it the gift of desperation. I think that's just horseshit. The only thing that really happened there is I came to the realization of I only had two alternatives left. There was only two things left, and at that moment, you know, and this is what we say is what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Well, here's what happened. I became willing to do what Alcoholics Anonymous asked. And until I became willing, nothing's going to happen. Period.
So I'm gonna, and this might be because I haven't been around as long, and I'm all of a sudden justifying the way I say things, but I'm not. I'm one of them guys. I had that gift of desperation, and I say it that way because it makes so much sense to me. I was desperate to. That's the word I can use. I was so desperate on how to. Mine wasn't set the drink down; it was to set the needle down.
Right.
I was just. That word fits so well for me. I don't know if it's a gift. maybe that's not proper way of saying it, but I was so goddamn desperate to know how to stop this thing. I knew I wanted to stop. I
Right,
knew I was
yep.
done, but I didn't know how to.
Didn't know how.
I didn't
right,
know
yep.
how. So,
I didn't either.
and maybe I caught semantics or whatever. I was desperate to stop. Now I'm starting to not, because now I'm in my head about that word desperate. That's a pretty, it really, like I say, semantics. Does it really matter? A lot of times my head goes that place, but doing a podcast where I'm asking people questions, I can't just say, I don't really care why.
Right.
I don't, this is one of them things where I don't need to know why.
That's it's one of the things that I think sooner or later, once anyone's in early sobriety, and we kind of touched on this last time I was on, I'm going to say it again.
Yeah.
There's a difference, I think, between that has to be sorted out pretty early in sobriety, and what's the difference between fault and responsibility?
Ooh.
Whose fault is this? Well, you know what? I don't give a shit whose fault this is. Who's responsible? Well, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And I use this example regularly too. I'm insulin dependent. And I got diagnosed about 25 years ago and how did I get that? Whose fault is that? Whose fault did one day I turned out to be diabetic? Whose fault is that? Answer, I don't give a shit. Responsibility, whose is it?
Yours.
Me.
Yes. Okay.
I think that's one of the things that has to be sorted out pretty quickly by pretty much everybody if they intend to start making some decent progress in Alcoholics Anonymous, and to get over the blame game, which we've all done. Mm-hmm. We've all been through it. Some of us take longer than others. That's fine. But when am I going to stop pointing fingers and take responsibility?
I really like how you broke that down. I forgot about that. That's a great way for me to hear, and many others is, I use that word semantics, but it's I don't need to know. There's certain things, and I like that fault responsibility. I like how you just broke that down because you're right. Does it matter? Right now, does it matter that you became insulin dependent? No, what matters is the responsibility of where you're at now.
Right, yeah, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
So that requires insulin and medication and going to the doctor and doing stuff that I don't like and it sucks. And the truth is, if the truth were to come out, I'd rather not have to do this shit.
Yeah.
But you know what? Compared to being dead, it's a pretty good deal.
I love how Tony outsees stuff. I love it. So we're going to talk now. Going to be moving forward on this is quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems.
Stop right there.
Come on.
Spiritual principles, plural. Plural. There's a lot of principles that Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us. And if I hear one more sumbitch go back and tell me that acceptance is the answer to all my problems, I'm going to puke because it's not true.
I'll read 417 to you right now. But that doesn't mean...
Yeah,
break that down a little. Let's hear Tony's take on that. It's easy to say.
First of all, let me say this. I hear that all the time. It's like a mantra. It's been going on for 20 years. People think that acceptance is the answer to all their problems, and guess what? It is not. In fact, I've been sober a little over 21 years, and during that 21 years, never once have I heard this story. I've never heard this, and I challenge anybody to contact me if they have heard this story. You walk into the AA meeting, and there's some new guy standing there, and he's from out of town or wherever, doesn't matter. He goes, I've been sober 25 years, and all I did was accept my way into sobriety. Bullshit. Do I need to start going through all the principles that Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us, the spiritual principles, plural? What about surrender? What about forgiveness? What about being of service to other people? I mean, This is a spiritual program of action. It is not a spiritual program of acceptance. I'm not.
Well put. Hey,
Hey, man, I call it like I see it, and if I tried, and let me just throw this story in here too, since we got plenty of time.
yeah.
That last probably 3 years that I drank, I absolutely accepted and believed with all my heart that I was going to drink until I was dead, and that was that. I accepted it, and I was just going with the flow. I mean, that was it. Until I somehow had a moment of clarity. But I hope you see my point. Acceptance is not the answer to all my problems. There are many things, and they all require action. To be fair, I do need some acceptance, and it is taught in Alcoholics Anonymous. I accept the things I cannot change. But you know what that is? That's outside influences. That's the actions of other people. That's other things going on that are in the outside world. The things that I can change, something that I don't have that I'm having a problem with, I think I better check the mirror, and the sooner the better, and then I better take action. Otherwise, if I just accept what I see, I'm going to continue to have that same fault. I'm going to continue to have that same problem with no resolution, with no action.
So, Ken, come on down and get on the show if you'd like. Like I said, our guest was not able to make it in, so it's Tony and myself just kind of chopping it up. It's part 2 of Tony. He was on a little bit ago, and then he's going to be temporary co-host for a while, and we're going to see how this plays out. But yeah, Ken, come on down, dude. I've been trying to get a hold of you to get on the show again. So you can get here in 15 minutes, and then you got an hour and 15 minutes on the show with Tony and I. And we're just going over some stuff. And we just talked about spiritual principles.
Plural.
I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back on it even if I could. Tony, let me say something to you that I've heard people say is my best day drunk is still not better than my worst day sober. I may have chopped that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get.
I've heard people say it, but then I've heard. What's your thought on that?
I think that. Obviously, I've heard a million people say that too, and to be fair, I think that the reality of that is that it's probably true. I think that
For the people saying it,
right, yeah.
Okay.
You know, there was a time in my life before I crossed that line into alcoholism.
when it was fun.
Right, yeah, and things were good.
Yeah.
You know, and in the big book it says, and I think it's on page 31, it says, there's an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did.
Yes.
And I'm always enthralled by that sentence because that suggests, and I found it to be true after some thinking about it and mulling it over, there was a time in my life when I enjoyed my life, and it was before alcoholism set in. Mm-hmm. And of course, long before that last few years of drinking when things were just awful 24/7. But you see my point. You know,
Mm-hmm.
their worst day sober versus their best day drinking, you know, that to me it doesn't carry a lot of weight.
No.
I mean, how are you going to really nail that down?
I think it's more so during the horrors of my, in NA, they talk about the horrors of my addiction. I think in the dark days of your drinking.
Right.
Once it was a
yeah.
problem.
Yep.
And it's always, I can't say this without following through with it. Once it was a problem, it was a problem.
Right.
Once it was a problem, it was too late. Once it was
Correct.
too late, it was too late.
Yeah, it's too
And
late.
it's like, once I got to that teetering point, Yeah, I can wholeheartedly say that statement, but there's a reason I spent double-digit years doing what I was doing.
Right,
It
yeah.
wasn't all nasty, and I'd be lying if I said that. If I said the opposite. But sure, the horrors of my addiction, my worst days clean and sober, are still better than those nasty days.
Right, yeah, than
know,
those last 3
you know,
years for me,
yeah.
without a doubt.
When
yes.
when whatever, someone paid your bar tab when you were in the nastiest time. Like I can't even think of positive days when it got to the bad days. I
Right,
can't
yep.
recall one. Like, oh, that was good. The dope man gave me a 2-for-1. That's it's like no.
Yeah. Oh boy.
I think I believe it was you. But I want to revisit this because I feel it's kind of in the same vicinity as what we're talking about is you're in control of your happiness. I think I brought that. It's a statement of it's up to you if you choose to be happy, or it's up to you if you want to be upset. Now, I'm not sure if it was you, but one of my guests brought up, well, what about death? They brought up a ton of situations where that's not the case always. Yes, I'm in control of my happiness on situations out there, but someone dies. I can't just make myself be happy.
Right, yeah, and that's why I don't like to even use the word. I don't like to use that word happy. I
Happy.
mean, I'm in charge of my own contentedness.
Contentedness.
You know, in the doctor's opinion, it talks about being restless, irritable, and discontent.
Yes.
My contentedness revolves entirely around my attitude. It revolves entirely about if I'm trying to be a service to myself or to others. You know, and if I haven't learned by now that discontentedness comes from selfishness, then I'm never going to learn.
Right. After 20 plus years.
Right, yeah. And I mean, to me, being content is, and I say this regularly in AA meetings, I'm going to keep saying it till I'm dead, I hope. I'm content. I want for nothing. I'm content with my job. I'm content with my friends. I'm content with my AA life. I'm content with my house and, my finances. I am content. I want for nothing. And you know what the truth is? I could change any of that with a simple bad attitude.
Yeah.
And to me, being happy, I think most people confuse happiness with being elated. Being elated is like the 5-year-old boy that opens up a present on Christmas morning, right? And he's elated and he's super pleased and jumping up and down and joyful almost, for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that thing's laying on the ground, and the dog's chewing on it, and he could care less. This happy thing, I just prefer to view it as contentedness.
Yeah. A guy can be okay with that. We're jumping around here. Practical experiences show that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with another alcoholic. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to the other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember that they are very ill. One more paragraph. Life will take on a new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives.
First of all, let me just encourage everyone to think very carefully about the magnitude of that statement that was right at the very beginning there. I'm going to say it again. You can help when no one else can.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I remember years going by feeling helpless and that nothing could be done and that I was doomed and this absolute state of despair. And they're out there at this very moment, there's someone sitting in despair. And we can help when nobody else can. I want everybody to just sit there and think about that for a minute. because to me that's an enormous responsibility. And the reason I'm happy to have it is because some guy helped me.
Right.
That's it. Period.
And this goes full circle with what I brought up right away.
Right. Yeah.
The reason you do show up and want to make sure that someone's there. And I think the word newcomer, but that next guy walking through the door.
Right.
Let's call it what it is. It might not always be a newcomer.
My favorite guys are the guys like me. They just spent the last 10 years relapsing.
Getting the shit
I love
kicked
that
out of
guy.
them. Yes. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. We of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm jumping all over, guys. I just want Tony's take on some of the stuff I read. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as us, as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They're talking about those first 100, or I don't want to make that statement. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans, all sections of this country, and many of it. Oh, it's talking about, you know what? Let's just read.
People that normally would not mix.
Yes, people that normally would not mix. We are average Americans, all sections of this country, and many of its occupations and represented are representative, as well as many politicians, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists amongst us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passenger of a great airliner, the moment after rescue from a shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervades the vessel from steerage to captain's table. They're talking about what are we talking about? What I just read.
Well,
am I hearing it right? That
we're on the same page. We speak the same language. In the back of the book, and Dr. Foster Kennedy calls it the herd instinct. Let me say it like this: if I am a plumber and I stumble across a plumbing problem that I don't have an answer to, I am not very likely to call a pharmacist. Okay? I'm likely to call another plumber. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody that I know, maybe not. Maybe somebody that's got some experience, maybe somebody that's been around the block, done this thing a few times. I think we're the same way. I think that we somehow latch on to this similar experience and are therefore able to identify with each other very well. And the comparison that I usually make, and even though I am not one of them, I'm of such an age that when I was a kid, there was a lot of guys coming back from Vietnam. And when you see guys that were in combat together, those guys, they knew each other. They would do anything. They would fight to the death, no questions asked, for a complete stranger if they knew that he was also a combat veteran like him. And I think that that's relevant. I think that our experiences, although maybe not identical, they took us down the same road.
Yeah.
And the value of that, I don't know how to easily measure.
I've shared before in meetings that in the earlier days, sure, I was a little uncomfortable walking into meetings, thinking people were more well off than I was, or I didn't fit. But I come to realize, and I share about this a lot, is now I know when I leave the state and go to a meeting, if I go to a new meeting I haven't been to, I can walk in a room and I know. I don't have to know your name. I don't need to know how wealthy or unwealthy you are, where you come from, what's going on. We're here with the same kind, for the most part, we have the same common goal. I know you. You know me. We are, it kind of, and it hit home for me, and it kind of just, every now and again, I get this feeling of that, and I share about it. I can go to a meeting, and I'm welcomed.
Right. Yeah.
because we have the same common goal. The tremendous fact for everyone, the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news about this book, that it carries those who suffer from alcoholism. Little plug and a little, hey, it's, that's earlier on in the book. They talk about that. And when that got read to me, I'm like, oh, these guys are still trying to sell me on something. But I had already gotten some relief by this time.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So I didn't need to be sold on something. And this is where I say, well, I was so desperate, it didn't matter. I've shared that with tons of people. Is when I came to these rooms, when I came in, that's just a word that fits. I was so desperate. I didn't care what you guys were going to tell me.
Right. Yeah.
It was, I used to make the stupid joke that if you were devil worshippers, today I'd be out here with 666 tattooed across my head.
Right. Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have mattered.
Wouldn't have mattered.
I knew that. You know what I'm saying? I knew, and that's why I scratch my head when I talk to fellow alcoholics that are struggling with some sponsees that are having this struggle with a 4-step or the God thing, or to me, it's a head scratcher.
Right. Yeah.
Because I thought you wanted this. To me, I want to answer those questions in my head and say, I thought you wanted this. And then we talk about what lengths you go. I can only see from my side of the street a lot of times. And my thing was whatever length, whatever hurdle you put in front of me, I'm going over it because I want this so bad.
Right.
Call it the gift of desperate. I don't even know if it's a gift. I was so goddamn desperate that I wanted to stop.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what you guys were you're selling, shoveling, or pushing. I was
a buyer.
I was buying,
Yeah,
scooping,
I was buying it.
yeah. It's to me, it's not a no-brainer. Just I feel fortunate sometimes with how badly I wanted this. When I've had guests on here just recently who's been in the rooms for 30 years, and he's just getting a 90-day chip.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Over and over, and I don't get it. Everyone's got their stories.
One thing that we've all seen, and I know it for a fact, or if anybody is an adult and if they're paying attention, every single one of us in Alcoholics Anonymous has watched somebody drink themselves to death. Mm-hmm. We've all seen it, and I'm just so thankful that I was not that guy, because I was so goddamn close to being that guy. That last 2 years that I drank, I every single day I thought about how can I take my own life without disgracing my family? How can I do it? And, I was going to take a lethal dose of insulin, and that there could have been some question behind it, but no, at the end of the day, nobody would have been able to pin it.
Right.
And that was the only thing. And thankfully enough, of course, I lacked the courage to do that. But I get your point.
Right.
Your point is a good one.
And again, this goes on a couple fronts. When I talked a lot with Paul, you're in the car with someone for more than 2 hours that's in the same program. The conversation usually veers around some of this recovery stuff. Well, I realize the longer I'm in these rooms, the situation I was raised in, how well it was, how good it was.
Right.
Until I was around you people. Serious alcoholics and addicts, I didn't know.
Right,
I didn't know.
right.
I can't ignorantly say, I thought everyone had a mom and dad that patted them on the back and say, attaboy and good job and didn't do wrong in their eyes. I can't ignorantly say I thought everyone had that, but I didn't think people had it as bad as I've heard people share about. Foster families,
Right,
molestations, and rapes, and
Right.
these
yeah,
things that
I know it.
I only saw on TV, or it just wasn't real, or something I didn't even consider.
Right. And then, yeah, I don't know. You hear the worst of the worst stories. There was a back where I sobered up in South Dakota, there was a woman who, and I'm just amazed at how outward, how quick she was to bring this up. But she, in the midst of her drug and alcohol abuse, she had 3 daughters, like 6, 9, and 12. And in order for her to procure funding for her habit, she would prostitute out all 3 of her daughters. And of course, eventually she got caught. She went to prison. She's been in prison for 22 years and sobered up in prison. But you know, these you hear these stories, you see it on the news once in a while, and we all gasp and say, "Holy shit! How could it even be? How could it be?" Well, start looking around in Alcoholics Anonymous and start seeing. And you know what else I want to say? I don't think it's just Alcoholics Anonymous.
No.
I think if you could get anybody off the street, line up 100 guys walking down the street, and you'd hear a lot of the same stories, but they just don't have the alcoholism attachment to it. And you know, it's just a numbers game.
No, I agree with you, and it's like that's what I was sharing with Paul. It's people's stories, whatever. It's the power in someone going to the podium, the power
Right,
of that,
yeah.
and someone being honest up there, not putting on a show, not a circuit speaker who's been retelling this thing that gets applause or gets laughs from the heart.
Here's what happened to me.
Yeah, some real shit.
That's it.
And because, you know what, let's talk about that a little bit, service work. When I talk about going to the podium or even showing up at a meeting, I see not taking on a commitment. I see all these other forms of service work that I don't think get talked about enough. What you talk about, the reason you're at meetings, to me, that's a form of service work. A guy filling a seat.
Right, yeah. I have come to believe that each and every one of us, any member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't care, I don't give a shit how long you've been sober. 1 year, 50 years, 3 days, I don't care. Every single one of us has different skills and abilities and aptitudes. You know, some guys in the meetings, and thankfully enough, are just been blessed with wonderful communication skills. Some of us are not. Okay, maybe, you know, maybe the guy that's not so blessed in communication skills, he can do something else. He can be the treasurer.
Right.
He could do. He's got a skill.
Right.
And to me, what I was advised to do early on in my sobriety was to find out where my strengths were and ply on them, and ply them towards Alcoholics Anonymous as best I could. And I've tried to do that. And of course, everybody goes through that first year of sobriety thinking they're God's gift to everybody for everything.
I don't think it's just only the first year.
Right? Yeah, it may not be. You know,
Some of us go a little longer.
You know, and I feel like I can do everything for I'm God's gift to everybody for everything now that I'm sober. Oh, look at me, I'm so good.
Yeah.
But you know, as time marches on, that kind of usually levels itself out. Big Book calls it on page 130, spiritual make believe.
Spiritual make believe.
Yeah, that's a funny one. Top of page 130.
Top of page 130. You know what I love the knowledge that comes from this guy.
It says, those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it.
This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our hands in the clouds with Him.
Head in the clouds.
Our heads in the cloud with Him. But that our feet... There we go. Maybe if I could see it, I could start reading. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought be firmly placed on earth. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. These are the realities. These are, oh my God. These are the realities for us. We have found nothing incomparable between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of the sane and happy usefulness. One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual conviction or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve of these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts the same spiritual program, making a better practical use of it.
But let me just let's go back to this other thing for a minute.
Yeah.
First, we all have different skills and abilities and aptitudes. You know, one of the things I do from time to time, if I'm asked to speak somewhere, is once I get everybody's kind of attention and they're all kind of looking at me and I'm kind of walking through what I'm got to say. One of the things I say is, okay, you know, I don't know if you've been in sobriety very long or not, but just everybody take a minute and think of something what you're really, really good at. You don't have to tell me what it is, but just think of something that you're really good at. Okay, you got it? Okay, good. Did you get that way in 20 minutes? Because I'll bet not. You know, for me, it was pinball. You know, I'm really, really, really good at pinball. And I was world ranked, in fact, for a while.
Oh,
and,
you're the wizard.
And I had to play every single day for hours a day, every day for
Pinball.
years. Yes. But you see my point.
Yeah.
You know, this is not.
Overnight.
Yeah, this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. And so, yeah, different skills, abilities, and aptitudes. I was encouraged to find what I was good at. And thankfully enough, somehow I've been blessed enough to be a decent communicator.
Decent.
And so I try to do that. That's where I apply that's my skill. And that's where I try to apply it in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why I'm not back there washing dishes or cooking food for other people. Other people are good at that. I am not a good cook. Okay? I know my limitations. Remember Clint Eastwood?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, come on. All sorts of Clint stuff.
A man's got to know his limitations.
So you brought up a point that, I don't know, I'm going to relate it to the work world. And it's, I don't know if it's a meme that's been going around lately, but I go to a job. I charge someone $7,000 to remodel their bathroom.
Right.
It takes me 4 days.
Okay.
They're not paying for that 4 days of work. They're paying for the 25 years of experience I have.
Correct.
And it doesn't, I don't know if it's just human nature, but that doesn't trigger on a person's brain from that side of the street. My brain, of course. Before I come to these rooms, I was thinking that. I was thinking I was going to come in here, you guys were going to say, okay, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start, and you got it.
Right, yeah.
You know, just jump left, jump right. Here's what you do. Now you're good. I didn't realize it was a fine line for me to hear this is the rest of your life, but a day at a time. Mm-hmm. That was two different. It was hard to think, all right, this is every single day. It felt like a lot of work. It just did. But then somewhere along the line, I realized, like, yeah, I don't need to worry about all that shit. Just
right,
it's a day. Right? Like,
you know, that, to me, I think one of the biggest, I don't know if it's even a problem, but one of the things I see in Alcoholics Anonymous is, with new people in particular, if you want somebody to come in here and take an interest and potentially stay as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and start to participate, I think in the very beginning for them, it's all in the presentation. And I think a lot of times the presentation is pretty shitty. You know, and I think people's hearts are in the right place. I really do. You know, that old guy that's been sitting around for 20 years or however long it is, but he ought to just keep his mouth shut.
That old curmudgeon guy?
Yeah. You know, we've all seen that guy, too. We know that guy.
Yeah. John.
Yeah.
No, hey, I love that old man.
But you see my point.
Yeah.
You know, there's certain things that I think would be really beneficial if we could improve upon, and that might be one of them.
So I don't know if we got did we go down the road of me asking you about a higher power last time?
We did.
And you have one?
I do.
We also asked if you thought there was aliens.
And I do.
You know, yeah. Wait, that's right. You were the first show that I started that with.
Right, yeah. Well, first of all, after you asked me that question, and I didn't have all the specifics in mind right off
Let's
the top
get
of my head,
after it.
but now I do.
It's the top of the hour. Let's get after this new
All right.
topic.
All right. This new topic of space aliens, which, first of all, let me say this. It is mathematically impossible that we are alone in this universe.
Right there with you.
It is also mathematically impossible that any of them have ever found their way here.
You believe that?
Just to get, if you were going at a quarter of light speed, just to get to the nearest star where there might be other planets, do you know how long it'll take you? 6,000 years.
Okay. All right. Right there. Let's hold up 1 second. Now, if there are some other beings out there, and there are some smart, but not smart, there's some other things out there that could get here.
Right.
Do you think light speed would be an issue for them?
I think probably. And even if it isn't, even if light speed is okay with them,
You're down. You're
It
down
could
to
be.
1,000. You're down to 100 years.
right? Yeah, you're down to thousands of years instead of.
You know, maybe I've been watching too much Rick and Morty or teleportation or something. I don't know.
Teleportation is nothing more than bending of time and space.
Okay,
And
okay.
that is the only real way, because I believe Einstein. I believe that nothing goes faster than the speed of light. I don't think that anything could even travel at that speed. You might be able to get like 99% of it if someone was like 10,000 years ahead of us intellectually and they have that type of technology. I don't think it's happening unless they have harnessed enough power to somehow bend space.
So I'm thinking, what's the closest black hole? We've got black holes close, not star length away. I thought that we've known about black holes in our atmosphere, in the Milky Way.
Right, black holes exist. There's one in every galaxy.
What's on the other side of one?
The current theory of my understanding of it is
I don't
nothing.
know. Oh, but
Is nothing. It's just what I've read about it and whatever YouTube videos I've watched about it. I believe it is suggested that the gravity becomes so dense in there that it becomes a null. That there's
just
nothing there.
A dark, a
Yeah,
black.
there's just nothing there. It absorbs everything.
See, I'm on a different page than you, and I think I watch a lot of, not so much the TikTok stuff, but like Facebook has something similar called Reels. You scroll through, you get the 10 to 35-second video or something.
Right.
I sit and scroll through those, and it start catching onto your algorithms and what have you. And I watched some of that crap. And the one it talked about, in the mid 70s, over just in a small area in England, a television transmission cut through on their news, took their TVs over, and it sent a message from another being. Now, two sides of this. I think, all right, so back then someone knew how to hack the system and put some fear out there, or something from far away was able to get into our television system, or I don't know. I every week I've been asking this, and I think I think we could be walking amongst something you'd call aliens.
And maybe I'm wrong.
Or
I don't know.
What about now? This goes in another direction, but like not so much government conspiracy, but keeping that type of a truth from us. Do you think that could even be possible to do in today's day and age?
Well, I think for sure the government keeps shit from you.
If we were
is it-
visited by someone, couldn't
right?
they?
Could they have done that? Area 51 and Roswell and all,
Yeah.
crash space aliens and
Where did Velcro really come from?
yeah, I don't know.
No, I'm joking. But stuff like that, I let my head, and I tie a lot of this into. I can bring anything back to my sickness of addiction or something with watching these videos or getting caught up on social media. Or
Let me
Go ahead.
let me say this. The pyramids in Egypt. Do you know what those
it's
are?
a good thing you're bringing up. Yes,
Do you know what those are?
structures.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're a tomb. Not one
Okay.
single mummy has ever been found in the pyramids, ever. They're not a tomb.
They're
But
ju-
everybody thinks they are.
Yeah, I honestly I thought they pulled Mama Chiwiwe out of there, Kimu Kuwake or a tomb. I thought they pulled a mummy out of one of those.
Right, not one single mummy has ever been found in a pyramid.
Where does it get that?
Those all come
stigma?
from the Valley of the Kings, which is like whatever it is, 40 miles away from the
So it doesn't come out of the
pyramids.
big pyramids.
Right, they never once has one come out of there. See, now I was so shocked to hear that.
I'm right now. I'm
But that's what everybody thinks. See, it's like society. It's like I think we're plagued by certain things. We come to believe after many years of indoctrination, I guess, that we believe that I believed for many years that in Egypt were the pyramids, and those pyramids
Yeah.
had mummies in them. And ever since I was a
100%.
kid,
Yes.
everybody believes that. Well, it's bullshit. It's not true.
I
Not one
totally yeah. This is
It's
news.
not true.
This is news to me, Tone. I didn't. I really did. I thought that's mummies come out of tombs. So that's another question I'm going to form for moving forward. Is who do you think built the pyramids?
I do think it was
Slaves?
I think it was humans. I think they did it. I'm not entirely sure how they did it because of the accuracy and so forth with them and how they transported all those rocks and carved them and put them in place and all that stuff. I think they probably did it. I don't think it was aliens. We just don't know how they did it.
And that's why we resort to some fantasy
Right,
answer.
yeah. We're trying to fill in the blanks, and so it's like space aliens and anti-gravity and levitation and magic.
Well, there is. Then it sounds like you're somewhat well read on some of that stuff. Isn't there 5 different areas on this world that has pyramids similar to the ones in Egypt?
yeah, there's a
like
crap ton.
down in South America. And,
Yeah.
and they say they're all about identical. The way they were struck, they were.
Not identical, but there's the step-sided ones that are the ones in South America. I've been to those.
That's
And, in Peru,
Peru.
and there's some. Where in the world is that? It's like in Thailand. They have some. There's some stepped pyramids over there, but they're not any. They're a structure that's similar to a pyramid, but I don't think they have any connection to each other. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Giza or pyramids of yeah, the Great Pyramids of Giza, but that's not. Yeah, Kafar. I'm pulling. You're right. They're all over. I didn't look at. That's
Right? Yeah,
there's
they're everywhere.
yeah, and that's why I asked that question. Like, who do you think built them? Because they were showing some of the precision on these.
Right, it's unbelievable.
The flatness of some of this rock that we don't have tools right now that could make some of that stuff. I imagine maybe that's changed in the last couple of years, but a lot of that stuff.
To me, it's not the carving of the
placing?
stone; it's the transport of them because they were absolutely quarried about 50 miles away. And how did
It makes
across
sense,
the
huh?
desert? How are they going to
You're right, the
transport
sand-
100-ton stones?
You're a smart guy like me. I put myself on your level. You lay down some big long telephone poles this way, then you roll. You put telephone poles this way. You put them vertical this way, then you lay them horizontal,
Right,
and you
yes,
you
yeah.
see-
They did it.
They did it.
I don't know how they did it. That neither does anybody else. Nobody knows how they did it. But
So now we're part of the masses who are speculating.
right, yeah.
I just think that's a great little sidetracker. You got to hit the Johnny? Go ahead. Oh, if there's something I can do, it's blab. So we were just talking about pyramids, and yeah. Welcome to the Recovery Podcast, and pyramids are our topics. So next week, I'm going to have the Kens on. There's going to be Ken S. and Ken W. And it's going to be a good show. Between the two of them, I think we're going to have 70 years of sobriety on this. Well, shit. We're going to have almost 100 years of sobriety between the table. Because I know Ken just got a 45-year chip. The other Ken, I think, got 20 years or 19. And Tony's got 20-plus years. And I got about a nickel, a little over. So we're gonna be on for a serious talk off him, and I think what'll be good, and I can say this while he's not in the room, is they all three see recovery different, and not see it differently, but they're all pretty good about standing on their own thoughts about recovery. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's what worked best for you. What worked best for you? What worked best for you? My goal is I'd love to, and Ken, I know you're listening, but to get some people starting to bump heads, to get some other opinions out there. When Rick and Jesse are on the show, Rick's really good about talking about how this book's been. You guys remember that the telephone game? That's where I tell A some story, then A tells B that same story, but got a couple details wrong. Then B tells C that story with even more details wrong. And then C goes and tells D down the line. And by the time it gets back to me, the story has a different color, a different name, a different state, a different, it's all different. And the reason I bring it up that way is I know like Rick comes on the show and he talks about how the way he does the 4-step workshop and the reason they started, and I always pick his brain about it, is he was, not that he was sick of seeing how people were doing this, that, and the third, but all these people started trying to improve on something. Well, we already have it in black and white in the big book, telling you exactly how to do it. Then you've got people out there putting together pamphlets on how to do this a little more efficient or better or whatever. Well, it's not, I brought up back to the basics, but that's not what it is. It's just doing it the way it is out of the book without any improvements. You don't see my air quotations, but that's what, everyone sees. It's this concept. You go to 10 different churches, 10 different pastors, read the same verse. You're going to get 10 different pieces of feedback or their interpretation of that verse. My head wants to say, why not just stick with the verse? But I understand when someone's dissecting it or giving a definition of what they felt they just read. And I understand that. And matter of fact, on that topic, that's where I decide to go on Sundays, is whatever pastor shares a message that I can understand, that makes sense to me. Not saying one is right, the other one's wrong. It's the one that I can relate to, I can understand the easiest. And I think a lot of that's the same with Rick's 4-step workshop. Is it helped. I got results. So why wouldn't I stick with something I got results? It's like this program I share multiple times. I lost a brother at 9 months sober. I got my chip, and the next day we got the call. And, I made it through that. I don't even say I made it through that. Time progressed. A month goes by. I watched how it affected a lot of people around me, and I watch how it still affects people around me. I didn't once think of drinking or drugging. All I was concerned about for that month, and especially that week thereafter and the funeral and this and that, was being there for my mom, being there for all of his friends, being there for people. Never did I didn't consider my own feelings for a while, only when people would ask, hey, how you doing? And and I'm fine, and whatever the case. But the reason I share that is I look back at it and say, never once did I think of drinking or drugging. And what had changed in my life? I found recovery. I found these rooms. Now, it wasn't even the drinking and drugging, but prior to finding these rooms and making this change, I didn't think to be there for someone else. My first thought when a tragedy happened is me. How's it affecting me? What can I get out of this? And how can I use this to my benefit to get something from you? That's the way it worked for me. And like I say, and that's kind of what I was getting at with Tony earlier when I asked, when you wanted to stop, did you know that you were just trying to set the drink down? Or did you have the notion that you wanted to change your thinking and change the way you were? Versus, like, what I'm saying is, I didn't know that when I was going to stop shoving a needle in my arm that I would start being a lot less selfish. I didn't know that came with this. That's like a parting side gift that came with my recovery. But I didn't know when I got into recovery that I was going to be able to get counted on again. People would come to me for help. My mom could rely on me. I could be a brother to friends and family and a decent boyfriend. These things weren't even. That's kind of what I was trying to ask you
none
earlier.
none of that stuff was on the radar.
Right. It just it wasn't.
I just simply wanted to quit drinking, and you know what? The truth is, I had money. My physical health was decent. I mean, I could have kept drinking, but it was what was going on in my head that I couldn't stand anymore. You know, and the constant thoughts of suicide and how am I going to end this and not disgrace my family and how that's what was going on in my mind. I did not expect what I got. And I think that's what makes Alcoholics Anonymous so wonderful. Because just shutting the faucet off, you know, I don't know how much longer I could have stood that.
That's just the first. I mean,
Right, yeah.
and I think that's, you see, after I went into this long spiel, which worked, you go to the bathroom, I start talking, I end up at what I was trying to get to earlier. When I guess a better way of me of asking that was, did you realize you were going to get these other things? Because I was making an assumption that you got all these other things. You
Right.
know, like I just
Yeah.
shared, like to be these promises.
Right,
You know,
contentedness, yep.
A lot of these other things that just for me wasn't my wallet or stopping the drugs. So I think about that and I try to ask that style of a question is, I think that'd even be better to ask it that way is, what were the benefits above shutting the faucet off that you received from recovery?
I think by and large is peace of mind.
That
I after a period of time in sobriety, and it did not come quickly. In fact, I would say that I was sober probably a year and a half, about somewhere in there, before some semblance of peace of mind started to set in. Now, to be fair, and I think everybody could identify with this if you've been sober a little while, you know, if you're not drinking a quart and a half of bourbon every single day, things tend to improve. You know, things get better. You know,
by osmosis.
right? Yeah,
Right.
you know, you start feeling better physically. You know, almost automatically.
Yeah.
Some of the dredges of horror in your mind start to alleviate. There does some hope for a better future kind of turns up relatively quickly, and things do improve just by default. But my way of thinking and the character defects, really, I didn't get a hell of a lot of relief from those that first year and a half.
So is that was it about that year and a half, like while in your early recovery, were you still having suicidal thoughts?
Not really.
And anyone struggling with that, that's a very, very hard topic that we're talking about. And I put a hotline up there. So if you're having any thoughts or struggling with that, just please utilize that number or call me or reach out or get to a meeting or something.
Let's just cross that bridge right now. You know that first of all, when I was going through that, I was so clouded up with, you know, quite frankly, the side effects of alcoholism, that seemed like the only viable option was to check out.
Yep.
And what I found out later was that seemed, you know, I was just such a train wreck that's what I was thinking about. But I found out later that simply wasn't true. And what I found out later also is when I'm pouring quarts of bourbon into my dumb ass day after day after day for a couple of years straight, that has a tendency to cloud your thinking. And at the time, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
It seemed like that's just the way
That
it
was
was
the
going to
norm,
be.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the norm.
Yep.
And what I had to do was to talk to some other people candidly about where I was at, and they explained to me, quite frankly, how I got there, how I put myself there. And believe me, it was me. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And I had to learn quite frankly, about my mistakes of the past. I was mistaken in my assessment. My assessment was the world would be better off without me, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. And I know that's easier said. It's easy for me to say that now. At the time,
But it's a fact.
yeah,
It's a fact.
it is a fact.
And it's not even that I'm not to tell you what's easier not to say. Speaking a truth is not has I don't think has anything to do with easy or not. You went from a place of distortion from a substance that you didn't realize you were going to because of that substance to someone explaining it to you.
Right. And not only did they explain it to me, but they told me what they went through as well. And you know what? I wasn't the guy that's sitting there thinking, oh, I'm the only one in the world that ever did this, blah. I wasn't thinking that at all because I didn't give a shit about any of that.
Right.
What I was thinking about was, I was so saturated with alcohol and so beaten down and so destroyed mentally from the years of alcohol abuse that I couldn't think of anything else. That's all that was on my mind. And it took me a little while to get past that. But thankfully enough, I learned from the example of others that I was wrong. I was wrong in my assessment and that I simply had to change my mind.
The power of the podium.
Right, yeah.
So, someone else sharing, and this is where I say service work is sharing your story, sharing some truths about your story, your experience. It does a lot. I get that when I share and get stuff off my chest, how powerful that is.
Right.
Especially when I'm going through something. It just, you guys have taught me that. One of the guys, I think it's John from our meeting, he's like, I'm going to puke all over you guys. And it's a way of saying, I'm going to get this shit off my chest.
Right.
Which, yeah, I wasn't accustomed to doing that prior to recovery.
Exactly. Right.
I wasn't a grown man to go, hey, Frank, I'm hurting today. It's something we didn't do.
Right. You didn't call up your friend, the guy that sits in the desk next to you and say, oh man, Dan, I really feel discouraged today. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm so worried about this or that or whatever it might be. That's just not on the agenda.
Right. Yes, I'm glad you put that out there too. So basically it's, this too shall pass. Hopefully. And you decided to put some work in on you. You set the bottle down and you started listening. You started putting your shit out there to people to get past this suicide stuff or these thoughts of stuff. And that's why I understand there is mental health out there, and there's also physicians to combat that or help with it. But
what
I'm saying is, please fight for yourself. Go, if you're having these thoughts,
just consider the possibility.
Yeah.
Consider this. Are you thinking that the world's better off without you? Well, I got news for you. You might be wrong. And I had to have someone show me that as a fact. And it took a little bit of persuasion, but I was eventually, over the course of a number of months, I was shown that I was wrong. I was wrong in my assessment. And then it was one more thing. It's like, how did I get to that assessment? I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care how I got there. You're standing out at the dock in the middle of a lake and you're on fire. How much time are you going to spend trying to figure out how you caught on fire? Or are you going to go in the water? Seriously.
I love it, dude. I love your analogy. That is you're right, 100%. I'm not worried about how I caught fire. You jump in the goddamn lake.
Right, yeah, get in the water. I mean, I want a solution. I want a solution to this way of thinking that was destroying me.
I love you, dude. This is good. All right. Did I ask you about your hurdles in early recovery? I didn't. We didn't get to that. No.
We may not have.
A powerful question here that helps a lot of people, and this is the feedback, is looking back, what were some of the some of the bigger struggles for you, the bigger hurdles for you that you were able to overcome? How did you, if there were some big hurdles, and how did you overcome those?
The biggest hurdle for me, like I said earlier in the podcast, I mentioned that I was insulin dependent, and I'd been insulin dependent for about a year and a half, about.
Prior to?
Yeah,
Okay.
prior to, and when I sobered up, my health at that time, some of the byproducts from the diabetes were really significantly bad. I embarked on a series of heart attacks and kidney problems, and in the year 2000, I was in the hospital, I think 119 days out of 365 in that year. And I'd be in for 3 days and out for 5, and back in for 2 days.
your
and
first
out
year
for
recovery?
7. No, it
Or
was
that year prior to recovery?
the year after.
The year after, okay.
And that was really, really hard. And then I had 4 years of cardiac rehab. I did not work for 9 years. And
All health.
right, yeah, it was all health related,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of real problems health wise. And I use this example regularly at AA too, and I know you guys can't see me, but I tell everybody, look at me. You know, look at me, and unless you knew about the health issues that I had in the past, you'd never know. I mean, I'm reasonably.
He's 6'5", and he's like cut to the bones. He's you put him on GQ.
Not true. Yeah, that's just simply not true.
But you know what? You're not a younger guy, and he's out there working with younger guys, doing physical work. I wouldn't know that you've had health problems like that.
Well, and you know, your question was what were the problems that I had in early sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know if it was a problem. It was a problem, yes. But one thing that it empowered me to do, my first 2 years in sobriety, if I was not in the hospital, I was going to 3 meetings a day because I could.
Right.
I mean, it was weird. I had a weird schedule. I'd get up super early in the morning and go to the hospital, and I'd be in cardiac rehab for 4 hours. Then I could go to the noon meeting in Sioux Falls. Then I could go to the 5:30 meeting and then the 8 o'clock meeting. And so I went 3 meetings a day. And in fact, after I got out of the hospital, I went 3 meetings a day for a year and a half, probably.
Shit.
And, you know, so is it good news? Yes. I mean, did I try to make the best of it? I did what I could. Did I have significant problems? Yes.
And that's how you got over them. That's the same. I mean, that's the second part of this question. How did you get over those problems?
Right. I went to AA a lot, and I really didn't have any choice. There wasn't enough. I mean,
Well, you had
I didn't
a choice.
Right. I had plenty of choices.
Yeah.
But I happened to live like I think 3 blocks away from where I could go to meetings at, and that was really fortunate.
Was it like is it a church, or was it a type of a community hall, or
It was a church.
a church? Okay. A lot of meetings are held at churches. In Minnesota, I've noticed this is more of a Minnesota, the Alano thing. It's there's similar things like that. I've been Arizona, Arkansas. They have like the coffee cup, it's called, and
Right,
it's like this. It's a building with 4 or 5 rooms, a big community room. In Florida, it's just not Alano societies, but clubhouses, you know, or churches, wherever we can get them. This is the part where I say, Tony, is there some stuff you want to bring up or talk about, or some topics we want to hit that I haven't bugged us with?
I don't know. Nothing really coming to mind. Nothing that's pressing anyway. Generally, I try to pay attention to what's being said. Like if I go to a meeting, for example, and this is very much like one. If somebody brings something up, whether it be out of the book or whatever's on the forefront of their mind, and it's just like, okay, well, here's what happened to me.
Right.
You know, that's the only thing I know how to do, and it seems to work. So I mean, I intend to keep doing it, just like that.
No, I think this is I think this would be good. And like I said, moving forward, We'll play it as we go. I know that we might there. I used to have a co-host on when we started this. It was me. I was basically co-host. There was another guy. We had a producer. We had an assistant producer. We had an engineer. The whole ball of wax. And over time, the guy I did the show with, he ended up becoming part of the board here, and he slowly kind of parted from the show just because of duties he had. And he's gonna be coming back, and I'm not sure if he's gonna be having a role on the show or not. We've kind of talked, not a lot about it, but however it looks moving forward, I would love to have you back. I'd love to have you on, if not at least once, twice a month to co-host. Next Friday, I'd like to nail you down for that show. If I could do that right now on air and make you
Right,
commit.
yeah. I mean, I'm unlikely to be able to be here every week, but I can try for every other.
All right. Yeah. Next week we've got both Kens. I was just when you were in the bathroom, I was talking about this. You said you have what, 21 years or
21 years.
Oh, you're
22 on September 11th.
so your sobriety can start drinking. It can drink now. It's old enough to drink. So and this doesn't mean a bunch. What I'm getting at is next week we're gonna have 21 years, 20 years, 45 years, and 5. We're almost, is that at 100 yet? No, almost 100 years is sitting here, and we're gonna talk about some recovery. If you're able to be here, I'd like you to be here next week. But what are you grateful for in life today, Tony?
Every single bit of my life is better than when I was drinking. That's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for opportunity. I'm grateful for the chance to be able to help other guys, to make a difference in somebody else's life. Quite frankly, God has turned me into something that I never imagined that I would be, and and that is a reasonable communicator, a guy that seems to be pretty effective at communicating what's happened to him, and I'm just really, the laundry list is pretty lengthy, and I couldn't have done it without AA. I couldn't have done it without God. I just don't know what would have become of me. Yeah, I do. I mean, I would have somehow shut the faucet off on myself, and I'm just so thankful for that never happened too.
I'm glad too. I'm glad you're here, dude. I'm glad that our paths cross, and I say this a lot, is I know I see things nowadays a lot different than I did last year, than I did 5 years.
Oh, right, yeah.
I do believe that my higher power puts people in my life for whatever the reason is. And I'm glad our paths cross. I was telling Paul today, like I said, when you speak up in a meeting, when John B speaks up in a meeting, there's a handful of others. But I do what I can to stop my mind from being elsewhere and hearing what has to be said and what comes out of you. I enjoy it, and I'm glad.
Appreciate it.
And like I say, I believe it's not alien. I'm pointing up top here, but we know there's aliens. So here at 2218, this is when people start tuning out, but it's my duty to do this. I enjoy talking about this club. It's a big deal that Al-Anon's back in the building here. They went years of having Al-Anon, and then it went away. So every Thursday night at 7 p.m. in room 23, we have Al-Anon back in the house. We've got CMA back in the house. The name of the meeting is Mathematics of Recovery. Sunday nights, 6 p.m. in room 21. Come check it out. It's CMA Mathematics of Recovery. We also have the high noon meeting. That's every single day at noon. Used to be Jitters, now it's high noon. Same bat time, same bat place. Come check it out. We've got a 4-step workshop, free, every Wednesday, room auditorium. And I made a commitment last week to start showing up, and I didn't show up on Wednesday. I'm just now realizing that. Not a man of my word. Not a man of my word. They had me commit right on air, and I didn't show up. Also, we've got tons of stuff happening here at the club. We got something called Del S Week at 2218. This is in June 18th to June 25th. There's daily events every single day. There's some cool stuff Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday events going on. Tons of stuff. We've got bike night starting. It's the first Wednesday of bike night. Stop on in, stretch your legs, free fellowship, burgers, chips, sodas here at 2218. Come on down, be a part of this club. Get some service work under your belt. This place is ran on volunteers. This place does not have paid employees. And if you would like to become a volunteer here, be part of the place, be part of its growth, come on down. It's a great experience. If you've got community service hours and you need them filled, or you know someone who does need them filled, come on down. You can clean the parking lot or volunteer at the front desk or something, I believe, and you can get some hours knocked off. As always, I like everyone to know that if you're going through some tough stuff right now, if you're struggling, you're worth the fight. Don't give up. You're loved. If someone hasn't told you yet today, and I want your ears to hear that I love you, you're worth the fight. Please fight for yourself. Utilize this. Go back through the show. Go to the library. Check out past shows. There's tons of people that have been on the program. Tons of people have talked about different ways to their finish line, to their happiness. Grab onto something. I just challenge you to go have an experience with some different type of life that you're living if you're not happy today. Other than that, Tony, thank you, my man.
You're welcome.
We ended up crushing out 2 hours. It looks like an hour and 40 minutes. And
Right, we're shutting the faucet
we're
off.
shutting the faucet off. We're finding recovery for our show. Till then, next week, check it out. It'll be Ken S, Ken W, and Tony
Hill.
H. I almost called you Millars.
No, go ahead. And anybody that wants to can blow my anonymity because I don't care.
There you
My
go.
last name is Hill, Hill.
To the H. Thank you, Tony. Thank
Thanks,
you.
bud.
All right.